systems are go, so I ask everyone to please mute your phones, and Dr. Gardner will be starting shortly, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions after his briefing. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Gardner here. I'm about to begin. Hello, I'm Dr. Charles Gardner, Medical Officer of Health for the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, here to provide an interim update on COVID-19. The reason why I'm speaking today is because, as most people know, Simcoe Muskoka will be commencing in lockdown under the gray designation for the province's framework commencing tomorrow morning. And this was announced on Friday. And since that time, I have received many emails of opposition and concern about this matter. And I feel that it's really important that I speak to the community about this. I've been approached by political leaders locally, Mayor Jeff Lehman being one, but others as well throughout Simcoe Muskoka, some in Muskoka as well. Graydon Smith, who's the mayor for Bracebridge, I've spoken to as well. And I've read through perhaps 100 emails from people from the community, business owners and people whose work will be discontinued with this order, people who've expressed concern about their livelihood, about being able to make ends meet, about keeping their businesses running, about the value of their businesses, fitness facility operators who point out that what they do is very good for people and their well-being. And people have raised many related issues. They've raised issues about the justification for this, wanting to know why I've advised for the shutdown. The province makes a decision, but I provided the advice for the lockdown. And they pointed out other matters. People have pointed out that neighboring health units can be in a completely different situation. Grey Bruce Health Unit, for example, being entering into green, and people being attracted to going skiing there, going from the GTA through our territory, through Collingwood, and going there, and yet we would be in a lockdown situation, and that would be incongruous. People expressing the view that despite the framework, despite shutdown status in the GTA and Toronto and Peel, people come from there to here, that potentially could contribute to the spread of disease, or at least be inconsistent with complying with the framework with provincial legislation. People pointing out that I am guaranteed to make an income, they are not, that I need to be sympathetic to that. And although I did not directly respond to majority of those emails, I'm responding now through this medium to let you know that I've read your emails, I've heard from you. I have spoken with one business operator, I've spoken with the executive director for the Barrie Chamber of Commerce. What I've gathered from all of this, I think, is a better understanding of the impact of shutdown in a very tangible way, of how it affects on people's lives, their well-being. It's, I think, been important for me to gain that better understanding. I want to walk through my concerns at this time about our community and COVID-19 and the variants of concern, and the UK variant in particular, and my rationale for the advice that I gave. So I've been very concerned about, of course, the pandemic all the way through. And I've noted that we really had a very large and severe second wave that built from September right through till January and only started to come down during the shutdown. The other framework approach was not effective in keeping it under control. It was really only the shutdown that kept it under control. And in particular, I feel that the stay-at-home order was key to that, and I've made that my focal point for messaging in more recent weeks to address that. And I've been very concerned about the UK variant here. So we have more of the UK variant, or individuals that have tested positive for the UK variant, or individuals who've screened positive for a variant of concern, awaiting confirmation as to which variant they have. We have more of that than any other health unit. And that really came about because of a very large long-term care facility outbreak in Barrie early in January that infected almost all of the residents and more than half of the staff, and then went on to infect entire households of those staff members and of other agencies that participated in the response, and resulted in a very large number of cases in our community. And then shortly thereafter, the commencement of outbreaks of a smaller magnitude but still severe in Bradford, West Gwillimbury, and Bradford Valley, and in Penetang-Washeen at Waypoint Mental Health Institution. And in those instances, we've seen, and certainly in Roberta Place, a very high mortality rate. In Roberta Place, over half of the cases in the residents died. So to me, that was a warning that indeed the characteristics of this strain is very serious, that it spreads very readily, that it is more severe in its impact, that it's very much a danger to those who are more vulnerable, seniors, those in long-term care institutions. And the fact that it could spread so readily into the household members was a great concern to me as well. We instituted an attempt to contain it with very aggressive case and contact management, but I positioned from the very beginning that we probably wouldn't succeed in that. At best, we would slow it down. And we've seen since then a spread of either laboratory-confirmed UK variant or a variant of concern awaiting confirmation, which is probably going to turn out to be the UK variant, in a number of other long-term care facilities. Unfortunately, the effectiveness of immunization in those facilities has really kept it under control, just one or two cases in those facilities, but also a range of workplaces, so that we've got a variety of workplaces, both in Simcoe and Muskoka, that have had a number of people infected, confirmed with either the UK variant or a variant of concern, awaiting confirmation that it'll be the UK variant. These facilities have work environments have included manufacturing, they've included financial service office, they've included a restaurant, they've included an agricultural facility, and now we have a child care facility that's affected, and a school exposure situation. And we've had an apartment complex with 25 individuals infected and one death. So it speaks to just how readily this can transmit, that it's moving along in that way. And we've had an ever-growing number of cases of the UK variant or a variant of concern awaiting that confirmation in the community among individuals who aren't linked with any of these outbreaks. So just unattached, unlinked cases that are of great concern to me. We've gone from 50 to over 100 to over 170 cases week on week, and then within this week, that last jump in the number of cases, including, once again, 8 in Muskoka. There have been 2 and then 8. And as I said, 2 outbreaks in Muskoka. So I'm left very concerned about this. And then at the beginning of this week, we had a jump in the number of cases overall of COVID-19, a 30% increase compared with the week before. And that was the first increase that we've had since the beginning of January. The shutdown was working, and it was bringing down our case count week by week, and then we had that increase. And to me, the fact that we had the spread of the UK variant, and then that increase was an important concern and consideration. We also had an increase in our reproductive number, which is a number that indicates how rapidly your pandemic is increasing or increasing. So ours went up to 1.4, which is the highest we've seen really since wave 1. That was of concern to me. And the history of what the UK variant can do was of concern to me. We know that it's caused a major wave in the UK, in Ireland, in Denmark, that once that strain became dominant, it was of concern. It led to that kind of a surge that was very difficult to control. And the province has put in place, as they came out of shutdown, an emergency brake process so that if you see something of concern, that you could put in place a lockdown for an unspecified period. I think the inference is a short period to see what happens, to help bring it under control and to monitor and get a better sense of it. So considering all of that, and considering the data that we've got now that shows that we've got over 60% of our COVID cases being either the UK variant or a variant of concern awaiting that confirmation. Considering all of that, I made the recommendation to the province that they would look to a means of better control of what's happening. I knew that the timing of our increase really couldn't be attributed to us coming out of shutdown. It was only a week in, and really you need a couple of weeks before you would see that effect. So I was more concerned just that the variant itself was having its impact, and was concerned all the more that coming out of shutdown would further augment what we were seeing. So I made the recommendation that we had better control, that we go into a shutdown or lockdown, the stay-at-home order. What I learned was there wouldn't be any going back into the shutdown that had been in place, or the stay-at-home order, but there was the potential to go into the lockdown, the gray status in the framework, and that I was to continue providing data on the situation through the week for their consideration. And so I continued to provide that information. We had additional COVID cases and a couple of additional COVID outbreaks that occurred. They were from the variants of concern. I communicated that. And so with my recommendation, the province proceeded and made its announcement that we would be going into the gray status. Since that time, with the concerns that have been raised, I asked my epidemiologist to pull data in the weekend to do up a comprehensive report about our status through this week. And this is in addition to the data that I was receiving and providing to the province. And one thing I can report is instead of cases continuing to climb, in fact, our total case count this week went down 15% on what it had been the week before, the week of the rise, the week that I was concerned about. So the week of, I'll just go through the data. The week of February the 7th, our case count was 211 through the week. The week of the 14th, it was up to 276, that jump that I spoke of. And then this week up to February the 27th, from the 21st to the 27th, it's 233 cases. So that is some reassurance. That it isn't continuing in the direction that I was fearing. I'm still very concerned about the overall trend with the UK variant and what it may yet do to our case count, to outbreaks in facilities, but I see that the momentary trend of cases overall actually declined. So I've had questions raised to me about should we be backing away from the gray status? Should we be modifying the gray status? Should we be looking to ending it in a week? Should it not be applied to Muskoka? Because I've been positioned that Muskoka's rates, even though they have the UK variant, their rates still are much lower than Simcoe counties. I'm taking all that under advisement. I'm concerned that if you decide to go in a direction and then you turn around, what do you do then if, in fact, there's a jump again and it continues in the wrong direction, as I fear it may? What do we do then? I've been told that businesses have a very hard time coming out of lockdown and then going right back into it again. So I'm concerned about that kind of swinging, I would say, back and forth. I've been asked would I advise the province to change direction. What I've indicated is that I will report, maintain contact with the Chief MOH. I will report to the Chief MOH these findings, and we will see what transpires. I've also been told that we can expect real difficulty with businesses if they proceed with the shutdown, that there'll be many that will refuse to comply, or that there would be an active protest happening. So I need to acknowledge all of that. I'd like to say that this has been extremely hard for everybody involved. The pandemic has been very hard. This turn of events has been very hard. I personally have found it to be very hard. So at this point, I will take questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gardner. We're going to start with Sean Gibson from Barrie Today.
Hi, thank you very much. We've been hearing about the backlash from people as well, and I just wanted to ask you, I think a lot of the frustration we're hearing about is the schools, the big box stores still being open. Some of the sports are saying that they can kind of span out through a gym, but they can't open, and restaurants can't have mass to table, but Walmart's full, schools are full. I think people are frustrated right now at the fact that everything is able to go except the small businesses that have had very little cases. What are your thoughts on that aspect? Would it not be time to tell the big box stores, would your advice to the province be to shut them or shut their non-essential down as well so that everybody really is in it together?
So there is a difference between the shutdown status and the lockdown status. They're not the same. Lockdown gray is more open, and they actually allow for retail with a reduced space. So that inequity, at least to some degree, compared with the big box stores, would be lessened. Would not be happening. The personal service providers, such as beauty salons and such, barber shops would be closed, fitness facilities would be closed, theaters would be closed. So I've heard the argument that you raised. I've heard the concerns of those other service providers, that they feel they're not a risk to the community and they're not being treated fairly as well. I would say we have in the past, and even now with the UK variant, had outbreaks in restaurants. To our knowledge, they didn't affect the clients, but as a workplace, they affected workers. And in the past, we've had outbreaks in personal service settings. So actually, one comes to mind, and that a large-scale one involving many clients has taken place elsewhere in the province. But I think more to the point, I hear people's just concern about the impact on their work and on their lives.
My follow-up is, you mentioned that there was a decrease this last week, was it? Someone has asked to us as well, and I think he posted it as well. Do you think that there was maybe too quick of a jump on going into the gray now that we're seeing a decrease? I know that's just the one decrease, but was it too quick, too fast?
I think that's a fair criticism that I would accept. I was very concerned, and I'm still concerned about the UK variant. And I know what it has done in other countries. And I know that we've got more of it, really, than any other health unit. And I was expecting some evidence that this was going to go in the wrong direction, and that was the beginning of it. it may still very much go in the wrong direction, but the fact that it's declined a bit runs counter to my initial decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. We're going to move on to Matthew Reiser from Moose FM, please.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what you said, excuse me, just to follow up on what you said at the end of your reasoning there. You mentioned that there's a possibility some businesses may protest. So do you know of stricter enforcement measures that might be in place to handle that if they do decide to stay open or to not follow protocols?
I think we need to be extremely careful, given the environment, given the anger that people have about this. I think we need to take an educational approach and really good engagement communication approach to work through this situation. However it transpires, we need to be very careful.
And now, going back to February 12th, when we were taken out of the provincial lockdown and moved into the red zone, in hindsight, did it make sense for our region to go into the red zone, considering, going back to February 12th, there were cases of the variants of concern, and they've been steadily rising since?
At that time, I expressed the preference that we'd have stayed into shutdown, but I did actually allow, I guess, so to speak, us going to red. Our numbers were more in keeping with red or orange. But in the back of my mind was this concern about the UK variant. And the problem with the framework is it doesn't take into account the UK variant. It's silent about such. So I wasn't sure what to do with it, but I think it would have been easier, I think, to make a transition to gray then than to try to do it now. That is quite evident to me now.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
James Buller from Cogeco, please.
Thank you. Dr. Gardner, just building on my colleagues' questions here, I'm just wondering, again, based on this sort of in and out of lockdown that we continue to go through here, I'm going to be perfectly candid with you. I'm seeing a lot of people that I would usually not see protesting this, now protesting.
Yeah.
Are you concerned that this movement back and forth is going to lead to an eventual just total out revolt of these rules?
Something to that effect is my concern, the concern of others now. We're seeing very strong reaction from people who've indicated that they've been very supportive before. I think that is very worrisome to me.
And to talk again about the Simcoe Muskoka split, if you look at the numbers even now, I think you said it yourself, Muskoka is not in the same boat as Simcoe. Yeah. And there's been multiple calls from MPP Norm Miller, from our mayors, Graydon Smith, Karen, Triziano, and others, that saying they want this to be split. So how far does that call go before, you start advocating for that as well?
I've been of two minds about that all the way along. I've readily acknowledged the data difference. I've always been concerned about the potential to unwittingly encourage more traffic to Muskoka if Simcoe's in a different situation from Muskoka, that it might lead to more transmission there. I've been challenged back on that from people who know their community well in Muskoka. They pointed out if this was going to happen, shouldn't it have happened already? I guess my response to that would be, well, we've not actually been in the situation where Muskoka and Simcoe are different, so don't know for sure. But nevertheless, despite all, Muskoka's always remained at a low level of disease. So I'm left really contemplating carefully that perspective. I've had trouble with it because of my concern about promoting travel there. But I hear their argument as well.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time on Sunday.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone on the line who has not had an opportunity to ask Dr. Gardner a question? Dawn here from Doppler. You go ahead there, Dawn, please.
Thanks very much. Just to follow up on your concerns about travel, Dr. Gardner, we're seeing that already, particularly in Muskoka. There's a lot of people traveling here that are not from this region, and with the variant of concern, of course, that's concerning that they're traveling with that virus. So is there anything within this framework that allows for better control of that?
There isn't anything that can be enforced that says you cannot travel. There's all the way through the framework a strong recommendation that people not travel, even in green, that they not travel between districts that are different colors, which makes perfect sense. It makes no sense for a person from a green area to go to a red area and then bring it back, right? But there isn't anything enforceable. When there was the shutdown, there was the enforceable stay-at-home order, and stay-at-home really would encompass, therefore, not traveling without an essential purpose, right? But to my knowledge, I'd never heard of anyone that for whom that was actually enforced, that there was any kind of a penalty that was issued to any individual. If you, at least in theory, if you restrict access to services in an area, that should discourage people from going to that area. So being in a more restrictive area, in theory at least, would make it less appealing for people to go there, but that would not be an absolute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else on the line who wants to ask Dr. Gardner a question?
Yes, please. Janice Ramsey from Simcoe.com.
Please go ahead, Janet.
Thank you. Dr. Gardner, I've been talking to some of these businesses, and they are angry, as you said. What they're finding is they have gone above and beyond protocols. They're getting people to hand sanitize when they come in. They're getting you to sign a name so they have a contact tracing form. They're going out of the way to double check and meet all the regulations, and now they're being penalized. And it's not fair across the board. They, for example, like a bigger restaurant who has seating for normally 400 people or however many it is, they can easily space out 25 people in the restaurant, for example, but now they have to close completely. I guess they are upset that they're following the rules and they're trying to survive, but this third lockdown might actually make or break them. Right.
Well, certainly I've heard that directly from people as well, and it's extremely hard to read it, I must admit. It's emotionally hard, and I'm grateful to actually read of it. I think it's important for me to fully understand that. And this has been part of the tragedy of the pandemic all the way along. It's not just the people who've been rendered ill and died, and those who've had really a rough experience with it. People who've been in the intensive care unit on a ventilator for weeks, or people who've lost loved ones. It's not just those that have been the victims of it, it's those who've, all of us, with the restrictions on our lives and reduced quality of life for us all, and our reduced ability to see and be with loved ones and friends, and then those who run businesses and having them endangered, or those who have had a great reduction in their income or a loss of their income. That has been part of the harm that's come with the pandemic. We've created a response protocol. It's meant to strike a reasonable balance, but it's not going to be perfect. And anything that you create to try and reduce the risk is going to be vulnerable to being accused of being ineffective, or being accused of being arbitrary, of not being fair. It's part of our difficulty in dealing with the pandemic that happens, right? So I acknowledge it. I don't know a better way, though, than to continue to work with this framework. I hear people's concern about the application of gray at this time, and I've heard calls for even the gray to be modified, and there may be the potential for the province to do that. They've done that kind of thing all along. That's not my decision to make, but that's a possibility. It has been something, a tool that's been modified and changed to try and make it the right balance all the way along, but I don't think it's ever going to be perfect until we actually achieve herd immunity with immunization. Getting a high degree of immunization, I think, will be our very best bet for bringing this under control. I'd like to note that because of immunization in our long-term care facilities, we've managed to greatly reduce their risk at this time. We need to proceed over the weeks and months to come to protect everybody so that we can start to back away from all these control measures that are harmful in so many ways.
During previous lockdowns, they were not, right? So that communication has not been really spread around.
I agree. It's hard for us. I mean, I positioned since Tuesday the possibility that gray would be happening to forewarn people. But it's hard for us to be able to, as a health unit, give a bunch of comprehensive advice to businesses before it happens. We've not been there before. My staff are working diligently to get ready to do that for tomorrow. But considering that we weren't there before, it was hard for us to be able to do that. But I acknowledge that there's need for a lot more communication on that.
Who would like to ask Dr. Gardner a question? All right, then I think we're done for today. Dr. Gardner, thank you very much for your